which is fortunate. Like, that's a good whale to get engulfed by. Well, hi there. My name is Clint LOVES. I have a PhD in biology as well as a master's degree and an undergraduate degree in biology and zoology. With my wonderful wife Alicia, we run a biology outreach center in Springville, Utah called Clint's Reptile Room. We offer educational opportunities for people of all ages, from homeschool groups to after-school clubs to university-level courses. Our summer camps for kids from 5 to 105 will begin here in just a couple of weeks. And I'm an online instructor of biology here on the YouTube channel Clint's Reptiles, where we are striving to introduce the world to the incredible diversity of, well, all animals, not just reptiles. And today, we are, once again, going to venture into the terrifying world of TikTok. Okay, so Mr. Jason, what have you for us today?
I'm glad you asked, because we have a real treat for you today. We're going to start with some terrifying animal encounters. Then we're going to have a look at some amazing animal abilities. After that, we will see if you can identify some mystery animals. And we will conclude with a real dandy, because we have been wrong about snapping turtles, and I have some videos that prove it.
Oh dear.
Oh dear is right. So let's begin with some scary animal encounters.
Okay.
And if you would be so kind as to, with each video, tell us what is going on, what animal is involved, and how much danger the person really is in.
Okay. Okay, so I would say that this is, if all those other people weren't there, especially, potentially much danger. This is a golden eagle, which is one of the largest birds of prey and a bird of prey that hunts very large prey, prey larger than 8-year-old children in some cases. Things like foxes, which probably aren't bigger than an 8-year-old, but they're bigger than some kids. Goats, pronghorn, wolves. So this is an animal that can take down some pretty big prey. It looks to me like this is a falconry bird, just given the way that, well, there were all these people gathered around, and so they were probably bringing it out to showcase its hunting ability. I don't think they intended for it to go after a human child, but they were right there to go get the bird off of her. So, I mean, you're gonna be hurt. Those talons are gonna do some damage. I've seen them hunt these larger prey. I mean, sometimes they'll grab like a goat and pull it off of a cliff, but given that she's not anywhere close to a cliff, she's too large for it to fly away with her, though we have seen them fly away with a fox in the past. So they can fly away with some pretty big stuff. They're not gonna fly away with an 8-year-old, but they will just sit on the backs of things and, you know, start tearing at important pieces until they die. And given the way that she just crumpled up when the eagle hit her, unless she changed her response and eventually started to fight back, I mean, eventually that's going to work on her just like it did on other people. Golden eagles do attack people. Like I said, this one I think is probably a captive golden eagle that they had out doing falconry. I was trying to hear where they're from. You know, this might be somewhere in South America. At first I thought it might be Mongolia, because I know they do a lot of falconry in those little horses, but I'm not sure where this happened. I know there were like 4 people who were attacked by a single golden eagle just last year, I think, in Norway, including a 2-year-old that was pretty seriously injured. I don't think there's any record of any fatalities, though. So, yes, real danger, but given that there were other people there to help her out, probably not mortal danger. Still pretty serious. Monarch butterflies are one of nature's most delicate wonders, and one of its most determined travelers. They weigh less than a paperclip. Yet somehow, year after year, millions of monarchs journey up to 3,000 miles across mountains, desert, and cities to the same patch of forest. But this miracle is disappearing. Climate change and illegal logging are destroying the monarch's winter home, the forests of central Mexico. That's why I'm teaming up with Planet Wild, a global community committed to protecting wildlife and wild places through monthly missions around the world. On mission 26, we helped to restore Mexico's butterfly forest by providing 360,000 new native trees and funding a year of critical monitoring work. As a member, you'll join a community of more than 12,000 like-minded people who care deeply about protecting our natural world. You'll get to see the impact for yourself with monthly video updates on their YouTube channel. On top of that, they have an app, which isn't required to download, but it's an awesome resource to stay connected, see what's been achieved, and get even more out of your membership. Our world is changing fast, and sometimes nature can't keep up. We have the best chance of making a difference when we work together, especially when it comes to things like saving large interconnected patches of habitat, which is probably the most essential thing we can do to save species all around the world. And the first 150 people to sign up using the link below get their first month free. Just use the code CLINT5 or scan the QR code on the screen. There's no pressure. You can cancel at any time if you need to. A huge thanks to our friends at Planet Wild for making this possible, and to you, our fans, for supporting us and our planet. Let's protect Earth's wildest places together. Okay, so that is a king cobra. King cobras, just for the record, are not true cobras. They're more closely related to mambas, but they are plenty venomous. And this, just looking at this king cobra looks to be fully intact. I don't suspect that there's any way that he has modified that king cobra so that it can't bite or so that it doesn't have its venom glands. And so I would say this is a very, very dangerous snake. I will say, I personally have handled a king cobra in a way that was very similar to this. The only difference was the king cobra that I handled was Otis out at Nerd, who sometime before they got him had his venom glands removed. And so, he was not dangerous. That's not to say that sometimes snakes that have had their venom glands removed don't regrow them or they don't have that done improperly. I happened to have knowledge at the time that Otis had bitten somebody earlier in the week when I had been there, and that the person that had been bitten had not experienced severe envenomation effects. So I was feeling pretty good about Otis. And the thing is, Otis was a delightful snake because king cobras, they're just like other snakes. Snakes, they're very intelligent. And there are only two reasons that a snake is ever going to bite. Either they think they're getting food, so you got to be careful about that, especially with a snake-eating snake, because it's hard not to handle them and eventually start to smell like their food because they eat snakes. The other thing is that if they're afraid that you're going to harm them. And so, like with all the snakes here at Clint's Reptile Room, there are very few of them that would ever bite a person once you communicate to them that you're not feeding them. They've all had enough positive experiences with people that they're not afraid of people at all. And so then it's just a mistake when it comes to feeding time, and we've got ways to indicate to the snakes we're not feeding them. You can build that exact same kind of trust with a king cobra. That's what had happened with Otis. The thing is, while you're building that trust, there's a huge amount of danger. A huge, huge amount of danger. So where this guy is now, like for this particular handling session, probably not actually that much danger. But the risk of being bitten while he was building this trust was huge, huge, huge amounts of danger. And even with a snake that trusts you, even with a snake that generally understands when it's being fed and when it's not, accidents still happen, and an accident with a king cobra can be catastrophic. Ooh. You don't want that.
Hey! Ya, vente, vente! Tranquilo, agarra el bote, agárralo, tranquilo, agárralo.
Tranquilo! He's like, you grab it. Just grab that. It's okay. Chill out. You've just been eaten by a whale. So, that's a humpback whale. You can see its little bitty dorsal fin, but also you could see its huge pectoral fin with the little bumps on it. Very diagnostic of a humpback whale, which is fortunate. Like, that's a good whale to get engulfed by, because they don't have any teeth, and they're a baleen whale, and they've got a very small esophagus, so they can't swallow you. They physically cannot swallow you. It's like the size of your fist, so you get an arm in, but they're not gonna be able to swallow the rest of you. And if they detect that they've got something really big in their mouth, they're generally gonna spit it out really fast, and that's exactly what happened here. The way that baleen feeding, by the way, works is that whale comes up through a swarm of smaller animals, swallowable animals, and tries to just catch as many of them as possible with all the water. It doesn't behoove the whale to swallow all of that water, and so it has this baleen, which are like these big plates with kind of a hair-like bristles to them. It pushes with its tongue everything into the back of this baleen that strains all of the small animals out, but allows the water to pass through, and then they swallow everything. And so the worst possible case scenario, I mean, I do think it is technically possible to die if the baleen whale didn't realize it had swallowed something so large. So it swallows you, and then bam, just plasters you against the baleen and swallows everything else and doesn't bother to spit you out, or you drown in this period of time and go unconscious, or it's very violent. Generally speaking, though, they're very attentive to, oops, I've accidentally got a shark or some other, because, a lot of times they're coming up and grabbing up a bait ball, and things like swordfishes and marlins and sailfish and sharks and dolphins, things like that are all the time going into the bait ball to try to get food themselves. And so it is possible for them to get something large in their mouth, and they don't want that in there, and so they'll spit it back out. So it's not that this person was in no danger, but not nearly as much as you'd think getting entirely inside of the mouth of a giant whale. I would certainly much rather be totally captured inside the mouth of a whale than have a breaching whale land on me. That's a worse scenario.
Watch this.
Now, he's standing right up to show me how big he is. He'll lean right back, and he'll use that tail as a spring, and he'll come forward. And here, well, you can see. No, stop, come on, calm down. I'm going to go down, and he'll come down, and that is the end of the conflict.
Okay, that's a rad video. That is such a cool video. Okay, so I'll start by saying this is a red kangaroo, which is the largest of the extinct kangaroos, and even red kangaroos very rarely kill anybody. I think there's been like maybe 2 cases on record of somebody getting killed by a kangaroo. That said, I think one of them was pretty recently, just within the last few years. So it is not impossible to be killed by a kangaroo. You could see it was trying to grab him with its hands, and then it's going to kind of position itself back on the tail and kick you with the feet, and those legs are very, very powerful, and they've got big claws on them. So a kangaroo can really, really hurt you. That said, this was mostly just like a really cool demonstration of the behavior. This guy clearly knew what he was doing. I mean, he's modeling for you how to interact with the kangaroo in a way to de-escalate a situation like this. But first he shows you how to keep a situation like this escalated, and that's probably the way most people would react. He was keeping a tree between himself and the kangaroo as much as possible, which is really wise. But he was showing you how if you stay up tall, if you're pushing against it, if you respond in kind to what the kangaroo is doing, then the kangaroo is going to stay agitated. It's going to keep fighting. But as soon as he got himself down and just showed a different posture to the kangaroo, when he dropped aggression, the kangaroo immediately dropped aggression as well. And that is just a man who understands the behavior of this animal. So often people come in here into the reptile room and they're scared of snakes or other reptiles. And really, they're like, well, I don't know what it's going to do. It can do anything. There's some truth to that. Not because the snake literally can do anything, but because you don't know what the snake will do or what you need to do in order to keep the snake from doing something unexpected. But once you understand an animal, it's usually a human problem, right? Once you understand the animal, in many, many cases, except for one where it's an actual predation event, your behavior can dictate very much about how that animal is going to react to you. And I think this is a really cool demonstration, and I'm grateful to have seen it, especially if I ever get in a fight with a kangaroo.
All right, very good. Our next category is amazing animal abilities. If you could just give us a little insight into what is going on in these videos, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
There you go.
That was graceful. Oop. And he's back. Okay, so I think if you saw our recent video on all of the false penguins, then you probably have a good idea what these are, and also how it is possible that it not only was able to ungracefully flop out of the boat, but how it was able to amazingly fly right back into it. These are Adelaide penguins. You can tell them from most of their cousins why they're all black head like this. And the way that they generate so much speed as to be able to launch themselves into the air. Penguins are heavy. Birds in general are shockingly light, and penguins are extremely heavy. But what they do is stupendously cool, because a lot of these, like penguins that live in Antarctica, they often need to get up over thick sheets of ice in order to get out of the water. And they've got, their wings are useless for this, and they've got goofy little back legs, and so they wouldn't be able to climb out. The only way to get back out is to launch themselves out. And what they do is they go to the surface, and this one's already doing it because they're out of the water. They kind of raise their feathers up and get a lot of air underneath their feathers. They then close the feathers down so the air is sort of trapped underneath all of those feathers. And then they dive fairly deep. And when they dive really deep, the pressure condenses those air pockets, because air condenses fairly easily. That's why it's not good for hydraulics to use air. And so the air condenses down really small, and the feathers close even further. So now you've got a lot of air trapped in a very small space. And as the penguins head back to the surface, the pressure relieves itself, the air starts to expand, and now the spaces for that air are too small to hold it. And so the air comes out kind of at a constant rate and forms like a little air shield all around the penguin. And it's like a little air slipstream that allows the penguin to go way faster than they would otherwise be able to go just through water and fly out of the water like that. It's super cool. And of course, if you want to know more about all of the false penguins, why I'm calling them false penguins, or how they do this, you should totally check out this video next. Okay. That's awesome. That's awesome. So this is an earwig. not a species of earwig that I've personally ever seen before. Most earwigs, especially the earwigs I've seen, are largely scavengers, often detritivores, so they're not active hunters like this. But I do know that there are some carnivorous hunting earwigs that exist, and this is one of them. And so those are those I used to call them pincher bugs, though they're not true bugs, when I was a kid. And those are the circe. All I ever saw earwigs do with the circe is sometimes another insect would crawl onto them and they would grab the other insect and throw it off with them. But obviously the carnivorous ones will come up and bring it around the side, kind of like a sideways scorpion attack, and use it to grab the prey, and then it looks like they eat it, sort of praying mantis style. And I don't think they're very distantly related from the praying mantises, though we do have a full phylogeny of insects if you want to verify. Anyway, that's really, really cool. Another cool thing, and we have a whole video on just earwigs. It's on earwigs as pets, but we show the awesome wings that earwigs have. Most people have no idea they've got those. So not only do they have rad grabbing circe, but they've also got incredible folding wings underneath those tiny little wing covers. Super cool. All right.
Versus humans. Who can solve problems better? The point of this experiment is to determine whether ants or humans are better at maneuvering a T-shaped object through a maze. For this experiment, humans were prevented from communicating with each other, which replicates the limited communication abilities of ants. You can see that the ants did an excellent job at solving the problem. In fact, the experiment showed that ants are better than humans at solving this problem when working as a group. Ants' moves were done strategically. Human groups, on the other hand, didn't show the same level of coordination and cooperation as ants did. Humans were going after short-term solutions that seemed efficient, but were less effective overall. This is likely because each human in the group wanted to move the object in their own way. Ants, on the other hand, acted as a single unified entity with one shared goal.
That is so cool. I love ants. I very nearly did my graduate research on ants because they are so interesting. And one thing that I've always found, I think it's probably the thing that when I learned it was what motivated me most to want to study ants, was that when we study ants, we study entire colonies as though they were a single organism. Because really, the way that an ant society functions, an entire ant colony, it's really more similar to the way that all of your cells function together to make you work than the way that groups of individual organisms tend to work together. And this is a really great demonstration of this. I feel like, I don't know that I love this whole comparison between humans not allowed to communicate and ants, because I feel like that undersells how well ants are able to communicate with one another. They definitely have all sorts of chemical cues. I need to learn more about this, but as a kid, a lot of times I would have large groups of ants in like a bucket, and they're making a lot of noise. And so I would be very interested in knowing how much communication they make through sound, and then just other ways maybe we're not even imagining how they communicate. I mean, bees, which are also hymenopteran insects, communicate through body language very much. Bees will come into the hive and do a dance that tells the other bees where they can find some good flowers. So I suspect the ants communicate, not only are they communicating some, I imagine they're probably communicating more than we even currently understand. But even beyond the fact that they communicate, the fact that they were able to the fact they were able to solve this problem so efficiently, because I think probably you could take a single colony of human cells or a human individual and give them a little puzzle like this and have them work it out with just by themselves with their own brain, and you might have a hard time doing it much faster. I don't know if that video is sped up with the ants, but I bet you wouldn't be able to do it in as few moves as the ants just did it, even though that seems like a very novel puzzle, not a puzzle that they would regularly encounter. And, you know, and it is something. I mean, you see the coordination on their colonies, just the way that they build the entire colony structure. How do the individual ants that are building it know what the plan is, or even where they are in the colony? The level of coordinated intelligence that the group has seems much, much greater than what you would expect to find in any other individual insect of the size of these ants. Incredible.
For her. She starts to chisel her way out.
Okay, so it took me a minute to see what was going on here. What this is are nesting hornbills, and hornbills are super cool. They nest inside of a hollow, usually in a tree. Could be like an old woodpecker hole or just a rotted out hole. But that's kind of a dangerous place to be because you're just kind of a sitting duck. And so what they do is after the female goes inside the hole to lay the eggs, she walls up most of the entrance so that nothing her size could go in after her. And they do this with a combination of mud and fruit and excrement. And they make kind of a concrete out of this, and they just close it up where there's just a hole large enough for the male to pass food inside. And he'll continue to do this as she lays eggs and incubates them, and as the chicks begin to grow. Obviously, and I honestly had not really thought through the logistics of this until this very moment, you don't want to be pooping in there. And so it's as graceful as it gets, I suppose. What happens after the chicks start to get a little bigger is it starts to get a little bit too crowded in there. And so the female will then start pecking her way out, and she will leave, and then they'll reseal it. Sometimes I think the chicks will do it on their own. Sometimes the parents will help seal it up. Depends on, I think, the species. But they'll reseal the hole, and then the male and the female will work together to feed the growing chicks until they're large enough to peck their way out as well. And then everybody's on their own. Stinking rad.
That was something, Clint.
Yes, it was.
That leaves us with just two categories. First, everybody's favorite part, mystery animal identification.
Mm-hmm.
And then we will find out just how wrong we have been about snapping turtles.
I'm excited about that. All right. Let's see the first mystery animal. I know last time they were a little disappointing. So we'll see if we got some real mystery animals this time. Well, that is the soundtrack of Mystery Animal, isn't it? I know what that is. It's a batfish. I am super excited about having a batfish here because the red-lipped batfish is, when I have my class try to find animals that they don't think I'll know about, there's always the red-lipped batfish. It's on every list of animals that you probably don't know. And I know this for sure because not very long ago I went through as many of those lists as I could find to try to find 10 animals that I didn't know, and the red-lipped batfish is on every single one of them. This is not the red-lipped though, but batfishes in general are a type of anglerfish, which I love anglerfishes just in general. And yes, they do have their first dorsal fin, their primary dorsal fin is located way up high on their head, and it has a lure which is often bioluminescent. And so they've got a bioluminescent lure in many cases that they use to try to attract prey. Very different from most anglerfishes. These guys are dorsoventrally flattened, like a stingray. It's actually pretty rare for water fishes in general to be dorsoventrally flattened. I mean, stingrays are, but even things like flounders, they're still laterally compressed. They're just laying on their sides. But this one is genuinely dorsoventrally compressed. This one's actually swimming up. They're lousy swimmers. What they do is they use their pectoral fins, which are modified essentially into legs, and they just walk around on the bottom. Super cool to see one. Okay. See what we have next. actually telling us a little bit about it. You can raise your hand right now. Who thinks this is AI? Because it isn't. Now this is a single spider. It's just a gynandromorph. It has half of its body, in this case probably the yellow half, because males have spindlier legs than females. So the yellow half is probably a male tarantula, and the dark half is a female tarantula. In this case, it's not always a split right down the middle like this. This particular scenario, though, where you do have a split right down the middle, is pretty common. And it's called bilateral gynandromorphism. And it happens like this when the error, whatever error caused this, occurs very early in development. Sometimes you'll have something trigger it later on, and then you get sort of patches. But when it happens early in development, you get this. It can happen for a number of reasons. One of them that's much more common in things like spiders and especially insects than it is in mammals is that it happens due to non-disjunction. When you're going through mitosis, that you don't get the right separations of the different sex-determining chromosomes, and so you end up with a cell produced early on that has, say in a female that has the sex-determining chromosomes of a male because the others went to a different cell. That's probably the most common reason in invertebrates like this. It can also happen due to the fusion of multiple zygotes. I've actually got a snake here at the room that is the result of a fusion of multiple zygotes. She's a female, but her name is Dwight, and I'll let you try to guess why. I think this actually happens a lot more often in non-mammals also, is that a polar body can be fertilized. I think this is a lot more common in non-mammalian animals. Oogenesis, when an egg is made, not like a shelled egg, but like the actual gamete egg. You want as much of the material of the cell, the cytoplasm, the mitochondria, all that stuff, you want as much of that as possible per gamete. Eggs are all about size and survivability, where sperm is about making loads of them. So usually what happens when you do meiosis is, say you're making sperm, in spermatogenesis, you start with one diploid cell and you end up making 4 haploid cells. That's what happens when you do spermatogenesis. Well, in the case of oogenesis, most of the time, you don't want to be dividing up that original cell into fourths. It's much better to produce 1 awesome haploid cell than 4 meh haploid cells. With each division, one of the new nuclei, essentially, that's made, just kind of gets packaged up. Okay? And so it forms what's called a polar body, a usually non-functional alternative set of genes. Sometimes, in addition to the main set of genes that ends up being made in the end, being fertilized by a sperm, one of those polar bodies also gets fertilized, and then they wind up fusing and becoming one organism. So anyway, this is very common. It's very common to see in highly dimorphic species like this, where there's a big difference between males and females. It's blatantly obvious when it happens. In species that are not so dimorphic, it may happen just as often, but we just don't notice it. And so it's totally rad. All right. Well, I love this creature. This is a shingleback skink. I think most of you that are way into reptiles probably recognize this, but probably most people wouldn't. Shinglebacks are a type of blue-tongue skink, and they are very unique looking though from the other blue tongues, so they still have the big blue tongue. Obviously, they've got these big armored pinecone-like scales all over their bodies. That's not to say that all blue tongues aren't fairly armored, but they're nowhere near as armored as these guys. And one thing that's very distinctive, I think they usually call them knob-tailed skinks in Australia, but not in Great Britain. But they have, their tail looks essentially the same as their head. It's not long and skinny and pointy like that of most skinks. It looks like another head, and I know they can't drop it. One of my favorite things, and just before I get to one of my favorite things, these guys don't look like death adders, where most blue-tongued skinks do look like death adders. And so they're going a totally different route of defense. They are, and this, as far as I know, there aren't any other blue tongues that are like this. And they're monogamous. So they don't stay together year round, but they'll usually meet back up with the same partner year after year, sometimes for as long as like 20 years at a time. So they're monogamous with each other, and they have limited amounts of parental care. Even after the babies are born, they tend to stay in the area with the parents for a while. Very, very cool animals. Love them. Okay. I'm not sure this is actually even the first time we've seen one of these. This is an orfish, but I think before when we saw one, it was an adult orfish, which those can be huge and they're reflective and crazy looking. This is a juvenile orfish. And like I said, orfishes get really big, but this one's really little. One big difference between the juveniles and the adults, other than just size, is juveniles, they've all kind of got a crazy like peacock start to their rays. So their dorsal fin starts like right at the top of their head and then runs the entire length of their body. It's crazy. Just one big dorsal fin all the way down. But in the juveniles, some of the fin rays are super duper long. And we don't know exactly why. You know, they might be used to help with predators, to help them move somehow. I don't know. There's all kinds of hypotheses about what those long fin rays might be about in the juveniles, but they're super duper long. Here's an interesting orfish fact, though, that I know I didn't share before. They can voluntarily autotomize their tails. They can drop their tails. You know I hate that. Not as much in a fish, it doesn't bother me. In fact, I think some species anyway, like they never find adults that still have their full tails because they've dropped them, just like many lizards can do. I don't know of other fishes that do that on a regular basis. They probably exist, and they don't grow back. So it's like the crested gecko of water fishes. Yay. If you guys have been watching this channel for very long, you know that pleases me very much. So that is a standard winged nightjar, which is a close relative, though I don't know if we know exactly how close, but a fairly close relative to the pennant winged nightjar that we talked about before. It is also African, like the pennant wing nightjar. They only have these crazy feathers. Until not too long ago, I didn't know any of these existed. And I didn't know there were any birds in the world with crazy wing ornamentation in the breeding season like this. But yeah, they only have those crazy wing feathers in the breeding season. So this is a breeding season male standard wing nightjar. We do have a whole video about nightjars and their other close relatives, like hummingbirds. And so if you want to check that out, you should, but not yet, because I think we've got one more thing. We're going to find out how wrong we've been. I will tell you, these videos always start a lot of conversations between us, and they turn into some of the best Patreon extras videos that we ever do, because every week for our Stinkin' Rad fans at Patreon, we have a whole extra video. And if you're interested in seeing that video or the host of other amazing videos or other great content that we have for our patrons or just supporting this channel, please consider checking it out.
All right, last year you made some pretty bold claims about snapping turtles. Mm-hmm. You claimed that we have been completely wrong about snapping turtles because most people think that snapping turtles are absolute monsters, but you seem to think differently about them. Well, I want you to watch all 3 of these videos and then tell me what you think about this evidence.
Okay.
Well, folks, here we are. Tank is up with me. You big goof, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're a goof. You're just a goof turtle.
I haven't gotten there yet.
And he decided it would be good to come up and lay down with his dad. He's such a good boy. Yeah, he's a good boy. Now where are you going? You're going to be on the back. Oh my gosh, you're going to tear my shirt. You're going to be on the back of the couch. Keep it up. Oh, you want to see yourself? Uh-oh. What's that turtle doing here? Oh my gosh. Oh, we're in trouble now. There's another turtle on the couch. Uh-oh.
Or this man is tiny.
There he is. There he is. Oh my gosh. Keep an eye on him. Where's he at? Better watch that other turtle. There he is. Oh. No, you can't.
Yeah, no, that was Tank.
Even Snappy had to come to this.
I kissed him at the last one.
Snapping turtle I've ever met in my life. And here's one of his biggest fans. You were asking about Snappy, am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's that. Tank and Snappy.
Where you going, Marge? What are you doing? What are you up to? Come on up. I have a lap turtle. I don't know if you guys know what a lap turtle is, but it's Marge, and she's quite adept at rolling, it turns out. Come on, Marge. Come up here. Come on. She just loves to hang out with me. That's right. She just loves it. Come on, Margie. My little lap turtle. You got it? Oh, yeah, there she is. So, yeah, we just hang out together. She likes to cuddle, and it works out nicely. It's a good relationship. This could get really work.
That was unexpectedly delightful. Yes. So that was Tank and what's the middle one's name?
Snappy.
Snappy. Tank and Snappy and Large Marge. All being delightful snapping turtles. I am now at this point 4 for 4 in my life. Delightful snapping turtles. When I was when I was 2 out of 3, I felt like I just had the most insane luck. But 4 out of 4 isn't luck. I'll argue I'm at 5 out of 5 because I've tried what I think makes the difference with one more, and he was also delightful. I just haven't followed up with him. It's not luck. This is how they are. If they don't have a reason to fear people. I talked before about snakes. I think when we talked about the king cobra. There's only 2 reasons that animals are going to attack you. They either are scared or they think they're getting food. On land especially, snapping turtles are not really thinking about food very much. And they're very smart. There's no reason for them to be scared of you unless you give them a reason. And if you have a lot of really good interactions with a snapping turtle, they're not going to stay scared of you. This is who they are. And I guess if you want to see more about my experience with these turtles, you should watch this video right now. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon.
What did you just have me watch?
Did it poop out of the... What was that?
Want to watch it again?
No! think I just saw a cloaca
Yes, you did.
expel excrement.
Nailed it.
Yes.
Sometimes when they remove the venom glands, they'll put like an implant in there to fill the head back out. So if it was done really well, but I doubt it. I doubt that was the case with this one. Looks really good. People don't usually do that anymore. It's hard to find a vet that will do that for you. And you don't want to use the vet that will do it for you. It's usually done by drug dealers and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I won't judge this guy.
Well, speaking of that, I think the higher risk here is having face tattoos.
Sorry, the higher risk?
Yeah, the higher risk here is having face tattoos.
Go on.
You can get a job.
Okay.
It's not 1995 anymore, Will.
Yeah, Grandpa.
He could be a kindergarten teacher with face tattoos. It's 2025.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
Boomer. I have a couple of friends that regularly free handle, not quite as cavalier as him, but will free handle king cobras. Neither of them have all of their fingers anymore. And all of them have lost their fingers to hooded elapids. So, with things with cobra in their name.
Yes.
One being a king.